You have a very busy week, as does the rest of your colleagues in the chamber. Are you going to get all of this done in 4 days?
It is a very big week, and it's a very important week because, as you note, we are back in our districts for recess. I have a town hall next week. We've got things planned, and so if we can pull this week off, it will be a major victory for House Republicans and our Speaker.
What's number one for you? Is it getting this reconciliation bill off the launch pad and finding a home for Save America?
Well, I think I have two shared number one priorities. Okay. One would be passing a continuing resolution tonight.
Okay.
The House of Representatives planning to fund the government before the election because a shutdown is not in America's interest. Mm-hmm. And then number two would be the reconciliation 3.0. My guess is it'll be hard to get that much further down the street on NDAA because there's a lot of other provisions that we're considering.
You get a CR tonight, though.
Yes.
That's entirely possible.
Yes. I mean, I'm hopeful we have the votes for it.
That would be a big story.
On reconciliation, obviously $95 billion in spending, no offsets for this. And you mentioned that you had a town hall earlier this month, and you'll have one coming up next week. At that town hall, you were asked by an attendee, why do you support Trump when he adds to the debt? This would add to the debt, right? Why not include pay-fors?
Well, first of all, most of this money is to replace our munitions. Mm-hmm. It's in our national security, given our military operations in Venezuela and the Middle East. And second, if we were to go the route of a regular supplemental with 60 votes in the Senate, we would be doing a deal with the Democrats somewhere north of $400 billion. I'm absolutely sure of it. And so this does what we have to do in that it replenishes our munitions. There's aid to agriculture, the SAVE Act, and then there's a couple other minor things. But ultimately, I think there's a debt ceiling discussion happening. But ultimately,
that again.
Yeah, welcome back. Ultimately, all of this comes together, and I think this is a lot less expensive than it would have been. And by the way, last year we cut $2 trillion out of federal spending for the first time in like decades.
Defense Secretary and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs will be on the Hill tomorrow testifying about the budget request for the Pentagon. It's not just the supplemental, if we're even still calling that anymore. But when you talk about the need to replace munitions, the President says we need $1.5 trillion, not only to fund operations, but to replace everything that has been fired, not just in this conflict, but in Ukraine, of course, in helping to protect Israel. There's a lot there. How difficult will it be for the Secretary and the Chairman to make that argument? And do you think that this number will land somewhere near $1.5 trillion when you put these bills together?
No, okay. No, I do not think
What's
that.
A realistic
I mean, I think
budget?
A realistic target for what we need military-wise, what we want and what we need are two different things, right?
Okay.
Would be like $350 billion. But, you know, the White House and the House leadership, they've decided to embark on this path with reconciliation. I think they've got $67 billion in there for the armed forces, $11 billion for agriculture. That is really the first step of many. And plus, after November, you know, we're going to find out what the next step is. There's even talk, and this is remote, of a reconciliation 4.0.
Yeah, right.
I don't know how possible that is given the financial year and everything, but there is a conversation about it.
I guess got to cross the first bridge you get to first. You mentioned the aid to farmers.
Right.
We've seen a few rounds of aid that has to go to the agricultural sector. Is that to you, Congressman, a failure of the president's tariff policies? Is that this is now required? You need to subsidize Americans?
Well, the reality was, you know, Mexico wasn't buying our white corn under Joe Biden. We were entering a kind of a dark era under the Joe Biden terms. So commodity prices aren't where they need to be. Certainly, fertilizer is one of the inputs that's driving a lot of the stress in ag. So the $11 billion is helpful. I think ultimately, Jamison Greer getting more markets for our soybeans, our corns, our grain, all of that is in our interest. And I hope we're close to something more with China.
The analysis from Bloomberg Intelligence on that farm money is that a lot of it, if not all of it, will be used by farmers to pay off debt. For instance, you might not be buying John Deere right now because you have to manage your own finances. Does that mean that there'll need to be another turn here? There'll be another tranche of money for farmers down the road?
Well, I think it's maybe inaccurate to say just for debt. If you're 62 years old and you've got equity, you're in a much different spot than a 43-year-old farmer with a lot of debt. Mm-hmm. The 43-year-old farmer is managing operational debt, probably be going to go through a renewal cycle here in the next 3 or 4 well, no, maybe the next 6 months. All of that will come around, and hopefully we see, uptick in soybeans. We have been watching those prices very closely.
Yes, right.
Well, and you mentioned fertilizer prices. Of course, that has become perhaps more acute due to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and difficulty getting vital ingredients to fertilizer out of the waterway. It's still an active conflict zone as we speak, and of course we had 3 more American service members die over the weekend. How much more difficult does that make your job in talking to your constituents and trying to explain why it is that these individuals lost their lives, why we still find ourselves mired in the Middle East when the president initially said this would just be a matter of a few weeks?
Well, remember, we're talking about a regime that has vowed death to America. If I've said it once, I've said it 10 times. If they get their hands on a nuclear weapon, if they get their hands on a dirty bomb, they would not hesitate to use it on U.S. soil. They have proven that. They are martyrs, essentially. The people that stepped in after the leadership earlier this year was eliminated, a new round stepped in. So I think President Trump has to deal using force to people that have been using force on us. I still think the president's position and a great majority of us in Congress want to find a solution that's long-term. We've been close a couple of times. It's a very complex region, but I think that's the president's focus.
We spent some time reviewing your town hall of July 7, which is why Kailey mentioned one of the questions you were asked. You're not the only one, but you are part of a smaller, maybe shrinking circle of lawmakers that continues to hold town hall meetings, have face-to-face conversations, at times difficult ones, and we salute you for that.
Thank you.
I'm wondering if you plan to do more, and why isn't everyone acting like Mike Flood?
Well, I do 3 a year,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have one coming up next week in Lincoln, which is the biggest city, probably the bluest city in my district.
Yeah.
Nothing gets better if we don't talk to each other, and you certainly understand that in the media. Listen, I've had town halls with 10 people show up because, there just isn't that emotion there. Now there's a lot of emotion in the air. There's a lot of opinions on both sides.
For sure.
I think it's good just to show up, and I hope more people do it in the future.